Welcome to our Mastering MarketSight session today on PowerPoint Sync. For those of you who haven't spoken with me before, my name is Ann Schaefer. I am the Senior Customer Success Specialist here at MarketSight. We are, of course, recording this webinar, so it will be available for you later on if you would like to rewatch it or send it to someone. And, of course, we will be asking for your questions. Please do send those in. We will answer as many as we can that are relevant to the presentation towards the end of the webinar today. If your questions are pretty specific to a project or are relating to a different feature, that's okay as well. We will totally address those and follow up with you through email. So again, thank you, and let's go ahead and get started. So in our session today, we're going to be covering a couple of different functions with the PowerPoint Sync ability here in MarketSight. We're going to take a look at essentially two basic approaches. The first is the basic approach in which one might have a typical tracking study. You have, say, a wave of data that you upload into MarketSight. You do your work. You then create and export charts from this data set. Subsequently, when a new wave of data comes in, you add that to the data set and then utilize the PowerPoint Sync function on the charts page to create an updated synced file. So that's the typical, approach you would say. Now, there's also the expert approach that we're going to cover. This is also, one could say, the advanced approach in which you are using PowerPoint Sync to populate a pre-built presentation. This is another method of approaching PowerPoint Sync, and it allows you to create your own custom presentations, in fact, as custom as need be, and then you can utilize the unique identifying codes for charts within MarketSight to send that information into those charts through PowerPoint Sync. So we're going to take a look at both of these functions today. So first, let's switch over to MarketSight to take a look at our data set here. I just want to point out that I am currently going to take a look at the data sets that are pre-uploaded. So while normally you would do an append in this process, we will be skipping that append today just in order to save a little bit of time. Now, in my starter data set, I happen to have a chart that I made, and this chart is one that I also exported to PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up just so you can see that quickly. This is, of course, a fully functional PowerPoint chart. So if at any point I need to go in and edit the data underlying the chart or change my presentation, that's very much doable. But, of course, the whole point of this is PowerPoint Sync and making sure that this data remains up to date. So again, this is my original, shall we say. I'll, in fact, even put that in the title here so that we certainly remember which one we're looking at. And then switching back to the MarketSight application. Now, my original data set here had underneath my data set properties approximately 617 respondents. I did the append process and I added new respondents to that data set. So if I take a look at those properties again for my new data set file here, I can see that 1,000 respondents were added to my data set sample. Now I'm going to switch to that new data set by selecting it. So of course, this would be the point at which you would append your wave of data to your original data set. You can see that my original chart is here as well. So that chart was copied from the starter data set and placed into my new version of my data set. This means that its unique identifier is present, and that way I can utilize it to update my presentation. So I'm going to head to the charts page now. And on the charts page, I just want to point out, by editing this chart, where you can find that unique identifier. Once this chart loads, you'll see it right here in the editor window on the left-hand side. So this is the code that enables this chart to update. If you're looking for it in PowerPoint, specifically what you want to do is make sure that you right-click on the chart area, but not really the plot area within the chart. You're looking just for the chart itself. Then you want to check your alt text here by Edit Alt Text. Now we can see that that code is present here. So if we take a look, I like to check the last 3 digits just in case, 3F6. I can compare that to the one that I see in MarketSight, 3F6. Perfect. So I know that this is in my new data set. It's showing my new data from both waves. And since my code matches, that means my PowerPoint Sync is going to work perfectly. So heading back to the charts list page here, I'm going to choose PowerPoint Sync now. This allows me to bring up my presentation that I had previously exported here, and that should be right there. Now you can choose to deselect these checkboxes except for the data box. And that of course is because the entire point of PowerPoint Sync is that we are taking that data, that underlying Excel spreadsheet, and updating it to reflect that new data set. I'm going to go ahead now and click OK, which will begin that task that will ultimately give me a download link for my new file. Keep in mind that PowerPoint Sync doesn't overwrite the original file, so that maintains, that's still in place if need be. It's certainly not changing the file on your computer in any way. Rather, it's simply giving you a new file that we'll be able to download here shortly. If I take a look at my tasks list, once the PowerPoint Sync completes, of course I do have my download, but before I click on that, I do want to mention as well the log file. This is an Excel file which is going to allow you to see which charts in your presentation have successfully synced. If they haven't, it will give you a reason why. So typically that's something like the chart was not in this new data set for one reason or another. Again, since we're doing one chart, we probably don't need to look at this, but just be aware that it exists in case you're looking at your presentation and you think something may not have updated. That log file is going to be the key to understanding that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the new version here. Just enable editing real quick there. And I'm going to move this over to the side so that we can compare this a little more visually with the original version that we had. So just taking a look here, I'm going to close that text box and zoom in so we have a little more space. Thank you, PowerPoint, for being yourself. There we go. There we go. So we can see now in our original we had wildly different numbers. Secretly, that's because I edited those to make a dramatic change. But you can see now, of course, that the version in our new version is up to date. All right, so that is, again, the basic mode of using PowerPoint Sync. Typically usable when you're working with tracking studies, or say if you're dealing with perhaps a dummy data set where you're starting work, and then you add respondents to that data set once the survey is out of field. This method is typically, again, very common, very easy to use. Now that said, there is the advanced fancy method, and that's primarily used by folks who have very customized PowerPoint presentations. I made a simple customized presentation here with a few example charts to sync. So I'm going to take a look here. Right now I've got this custom slide. We have 3 charts. The idea is that, of course, you would have taken time to place your charts as needed. You would point in, key points, key takeaways. You would have done a lot of customization. The idea is that what we're going to do with each of these is we're going to take a code from a chart in MarketSight and then ultimately put it into the alt text here and update by using PowerPoint Sync. All right, so for that, I'm going to switch my data set back to my original 2019 file here, just to make it a little easier to pick a few charts. So typically, the easiest way to get that code is to simply right-click on a chart and choose Edit. It saves you from having the load time of loading the chart and then hitting the Edit button. So although it's a small change, a small savings, it does add up over time. I'm going to take the chart code here, and I'm going to make sure that I copy this chart code. And then I'm going to go ahead and place this into my lovely chart right here. I'll edit my alt text. I will place that and close that. So similarly, if I go to my next chart, I have my blank alt text here. So I might go back to my charts page and then choose to pick another chart here. So let's say if I scroll down further in the list, let's say, for example, I really want to use this particular chart. This is probably going to look a little cramped, but we'll go with it. It'll be fine. With this particular chart, again, right-click and choose Edit. Grab that custom code here. Make sure that you copy it. So occasionally, of course, copy-paste being interesting. You want to make sure that you, again, edit the alt text in order to bring up this box here on the side, and then paste that in. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that, and of course I'm going to save that, so do make sure that you save your presentation. That is important. And I'm going to head back to the charts page to utilize the PowerPoint sync. So I'm going to maximize this window for just a moment and browse for my presentation here. Again, that should be on my desktop right there. Again, I can select or deselect these options depending on my preference, but for the moment I'll leave them and I'll click OK. As before, that will pop up the tasks list on the side, and I will ultimately get my PowerPoint presentation with my updated charts. All right, almost there. And now we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and download that. We'll move that over to the side here. We'll enable editing. Just drag that over so we can compare those two. And now we can see that my titles and my charts have changed for those two charts that had my ID that I added to each of those. Now this chart, the one that I did not put an ID in, has remained untouched. So if you have put in a custom chart at some point that you created elsewhere, say through Excel, not a problem. Just don't put in a code, and as you can see, it remains untouched by that PowerPoint sync. So this is the advanced method. Again, if you are building very customized presentations for your clients, this does have an advantage because, of course, these charts then remain up to date. Should I do another append, I add yet more data, I don't have to, copy paste my chart and try to resize it again or anything like that, or B, even remake the presentation. I simply go ahead and utilize that PowerPoint sync so that the data underlying those charts is up to date. Definitely something to keep in mind. Now, a couple of points I do want to make is that really what it's looking for in updating is the data. So if you take a look at these two charts here, we compare these charts, I'm essentially dealing with more or less the same chart visualization options. So things like the fact, I have grid lines, the blue colors that are in use in both of these charts, the font used for my title. All of these are going to essentially remain in place. My chart type remains in place. So in this case, I would still have a column chart, regardless of the chart that I sync with. But that data, again, underlying this chart, that is what specifically PowerPoint sync is replacing. Of course, it doesn't take too much of the imagination to think, okay, well, what if I happen to have an entirely new presentation and I have a new slide, of course, and I want to go in and copy one of these charts and then paste it into my lovely new presentation. That's not a problem. This is ultimately something that can be synced as well. So if I take a look, and again, I edit that alt text, in this case simply by right-clicking on the chart area, but not the plot area, I'll see that that code goes with the chart. So if I copy-paste charts into other presentations, those presentations can also be synced because those codes remain present. Note that in this case, the formatting, of course, is matching the new presentation, but that code, as it is present and remains unique, still enables me to use that chart sync functionality. Now, again, chart sync is primarily used when you have those waves of data and updating data. So if you're not really updating data, it may not be quite as useful to you. It's intended for that data over time, but it still can be handy in situations where, for whatever reason, that data set gets updated. Now, taking a quick look here, just want to make sure, do we have any questions about PowerPoint sync functionality, either the basic approach or the advanced approach in which we go ahead and we customize an existing PowerPoint file to add the chart codes to that file? All right, so just a few questions. All right, so taking a look at the questions that we have here, we're going to pick a few to answer. So the PowerPoint sync functionality is located in MarketSight on the charts page. So you'll need to be on charts, and then you'll see the PowerPoint sync button in the gray toolbar. I should note that this is a feature that is specific to enterprise level accounts and above. So if you are working with a professional level account, this is not going to be available. It's most likely going to be grayed out for you. So you may need to upgrade in order to take advantage of this functionality. All right, so we had a new question. If I do an import, will PowerPoint Sync work? Fair enough. So what we're referring to in the case of doing an import is specifically the fact, MarketSight has the ability to import from one data set to another the work that you've done. So if I uploaded a new copy of this data set, I could import variables, crosstabs, and charts into my new file. Yes, PowerPoint Sync will still work. When you complete that import process and the chart is copied over into the new data set, again, that code goes with it, meaning that that PowerPoint Sync functionality does also move with that. All right. So we're taking a look at the additional questions now and just picking a few that are general to the topic or to charting. And by the way, if you have any ideas on what you would like to see in our next Mastering MarketSight session, those are also great. We would welcome your input as well on that, so do let us know. Okay, we have another question. Yes, if you copy that chart into a new presentation, it shouldn't matter how many times you copy it. So in that new file that I created, I copied and pasted that chart. So if I copy and pasted that chart again from that presentation into yet another presentation, again, that alt text should go with it. As long as that alt text is present with that unique identifier, then you should be good to go, as long as it's there. So you can always check that. Remember to right-click on the chart, and sort of a corner is usually a pretty good idea. That gets you the chart area. You can then edit the alt text and make sure that that chart code is present. So it shouldn't matter how many times you copy-paste that chart. It should go with the chart. All right. So we do have a couple more questions. You can sync as many times as you would like. So you really only have to sync the one time. You don't have to actually go to the PowerPoint sync function multiple times unless you're, say, making multiple modifications to either the charting in your PowerPoint or to the data set itself. So the PowerPoint sync should go through your presentation and update everything at once. Yes, okay, one more question, and that's about locating the alt text. It might be a little easier. Let's see. I guess we'll make this chart bigger since we already have this selected. The easiest way to get the alt text is essentially to make sure that you're right-clicking on the chart area. So if you look at PowerPoint can be a little specific when you are clicking on charts. If I click here or I right-click here, I'm getting the plot area within the chart itself, and that's not what I'm looking for. As you can see, the alt text for that is grayed out because this is really content within the overall chart object. I am specifically looking for this empty area outside of the plot. I'm looking for the chart area itself. And again, usually I find that the corners tend to be the easiest way to right-click and then get to edit that alt text. You can also go through the ribbon, a little more challenging but still doable. Essentially, you'll find that you have the option to select the chart area here as well. You'll have a drop down for all of the different objects within this chart. And then once you've selected the chart area there, alt text will be available. If you click here, that will open this panel here on the right. All right, the last question. There are really no limitations for the Mac. This should work for Mac files just as well as regular PowerPoint from a PC. Essentially, it's just delivering a new PowerPoint file to you. If you have issues when you're using a Mac computer with the PowerPoint functionality in MarketSight, please do reach out to us and let us know. We'll be happy to assist with that to make sure that, of course, you're able to utilize that PowerPoint sync function in order to get that updated data. All right, those look like our related questions here. So we have a few more. We'll follow up with you after, but we are able to give you a few minutes back in your morning. So thank you so much for attending our quick session on MarketSight's PowerPoint functionality. And again, we hope you find it useful. We'll have this video sent out to everyone shortly. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.